because you can't be smoking at a Panthers game.
No,
you can't be smoking at a Dolphin game. I mean, it's the people are going to be consuming cannabis like they do alcohol, and it's going to be via beverage.
Hey everyone, welcome to our latest TDR Cannabis Exclusive. I hope you're paying attention to the markets this morning. Seems to be a bumpy ride here today, but the interest level is there. We've been talking a lot of best thought leaders in this space on where the industry is going. We're going to continue on that trend. We welcome a familiar face back to the podcast. It's been about a year and a half. Last time we had you on at your nice backyard down in Fort Lauderdale. That was sweet. But the CEO of Sunburn Cannabis, Brady Cobb, back to the podcast. Good to see you. It's been a while.
Good to see you guys, man. It's been a minute. I've been a fan, and you guys have done probably the best coverage on our coming out party, Cannabis's Wake, the arrival. We finally woke up from a slumber. So it's great to be back on, man. It's great to see you guys.
Well, there was some times there, Anthony, you probably attest to this. We're like, what are we doing for like 9 months? Because it was like, is there any light at the end of the tunnel? And then bam, just like Canopy did 5 years ago when they raised $5 billion. This announcement happens 2 weeks ago at the end of August and just lit a fire into the whole industry. So it's really nice to see.
I raised capital. I raised $70 million of capital during this time period for a private, non-public, no liquidity event in the future during that time period. So, the tread marks, the wounds, they feel a little bit better with the price action, but they're still there.
Wow. A lot of nights out taking guys to the Miami Heat and Florida Panther games last spring. Like, how'd you pull that off?
It was what was amazing is I'd say 90% of the investors that came in, was the average check size of just under, call it $1 million, were first-time cannabis investors.
Really?
They believe in the power of the brand. They believed in the brand story. They believed in the brand, and they believed in taking that brand story and pairing it with a proven management team that has done this a couple times in Florida. And we weren't chasing shiny objects of we're going to be in 10 states or 8 states or 7 states. It was a very defined pitch. And then we also raised quite a bit of capital from the alcohol industry, which we can talk about later on about where I see this process ultimately leading us, because, that was a big define. We let the foxes in the hen house on purpose.
Yeah. Well, think about this. This is a $6 billion market. Focus on one thing and do it well. When I say $6 billion, I mean the state of Florida, if adult use does pass. But you being an attorney, you understand obviously what goes on in Washington. You obviously have some pretty influential contacts. Where are we at right now when it comes to adult use and the chances of it passing?
You talking about DC or Florida?
Florida, sorry.
Yeah, so Florida's in a very interesting place. So, look, I will give Kim Rivers credit. Write this down somewhere for everybody that says all I do is hate on her. I will give her credit. She put her money where her mouth is. She is a significant amount of capital into this thing. I think close to $50 million at last filing I saw, which, having just raised 70, I know how hard it is to do that. So that is one hell of a bless you, by the way. That's one hell of a push of a chips in. It is currently before the Florida Supreme Court. The court has to certify based on basically 2 items. It can't be misleading to voters, and it has to have a single subject. And it's failed at the Supreme Court the last couple of times because they tried to include home grow, the ability for patients to home grow, and they found that was not a single subject. The Attorney General, as the Attorney General has done in almost every instance that a constitutional amendment was ever up, and that's what one of my practice areas previously was, constitutional amendments and defending them on behalf of the Senate. I represented the Florida Senate in the 2010 redistricting amendment, et cetera. So the hardest part's the court. You got 5 DeSantis appointees on the court. And where I'll give Kim credit is she's already got enough signatures. So check that box. That's usually a hard part. Signatures are there. The briefing's done. The Attorney General's brief was pretty weak in my estimation. A lot of her lead arguments were arguments that the court had already sided with the amendment backers in the previous cases on. So from a legal standpoint, this thing is as teed up as it can be. I still put it at a coin flip as to whether it gets through the court or not. And I think the oral argument
is home grow in it this time around, or they omitted that?
Okay. They purposely omitted it. Kim hired really good counsel. She had the right lawyers on it. She has done a tremendous job in getting it this far and having the signatures ready. The issue is going to be the Florida Supreme Court and the composition of the court. You have 5 DeSantis appointees on the court. He's had some negative comments about cannabis. I've known Ron, the governor, quite a long time. Everybody on the inside.
Why does he? If you know him, like, is it surprising?
Everybody on the inside is telling me he's talking to the voters in Iowa. which, makes sense. Iowa's not legal. That's the first primary state in our screwed up primary system that you have to go through this one little state where you have to try to pigeonhole your position to talk to a certain audience. That said, I'm hoping he's not talking to the Florida Supreme Court too, through the press. So the good news is, from an actual doing stuff standpoint, he legalized flower in 2017. Which was the catalyst that really set this market on fire as far as the Florida market overall, because before that it was just low THC and derivative products. So he signed that press release, he did it, and he has modernized our regulatory system and our regulatory office, OMU, in a big way, in making variances much quicker to turn around, new product offerings, et cetera. So his words say one thing, his actions say another. This all comes down to the court. It is a big, this is a big coin flip. Florida goes, my humble opinion, it's the biggest market in the country, right there with California. But California has 12,000 licenses. Florida will have max, 43, 44 when they finally get around to issuing everything. And then the real question is going to be, what happens if it doesn't pass? I think, this is just me saying this out loud, but the fact that Kim was willing to put 50 million plus on the line tells you how bad they need it. If you look at how quickly everybody's opening stores, which MJ Biz just did a good story on this, Verano's opened 15 stores in 6 weeks. You have AYR store count exploding. You have Curaleaf continuing to open stores. Trulieve continuing to open stores past 120. They're all betting on rec. If rec doesn't happen, how many of those stores go dark?
I was going to say, how many of those companies with big footprints already that are selling suspect product, like what happens to them?
I don't know. We're planning kind of up. I'm planning it as 2 wins. If it passes, obviously, then, it's a big win because where our stores are located, I don't have a lot of stores. That's why we bought MedMen's assets. We have really good locations. So
where are you located again? You have 11 dispensaries, correct, in Florida?
Yeah, there's 13 total, 11 are open, but our store locations are, MedMen only really did one thing right through their time, and they were really good at citing dispensaries. Didn't matter where they were.
Yeah.
So I'm on Duval Street in Key West, right across the street from Sloppy Joe's. I'm on South Beach at 13th and Alton with 35 parking spots, at Fort Lauderdale at US 1.
That store is busy.
Clematis Street in downtown Palm Beach, right in the bar district. Orlando at the entrance to UCF. Tallahassee right near campus. Jacksonville, 3 stores around the beaches and everything in Jacksonville. Sarasota on Main Street. Tampa and South Tampa. St. Pete right in the bar district. So places where tourists or people are naturally going to have a good time. They don't have to drive out of their way to a tertiary shopping center somewhere out of the way. Because the number in Florida that everyone needs to pay attention to, 140 million visitors annually over the age of 21 that could potentially be purchasers. It's huge.
So forget the 21 million that are in the state.
There's 21 million, almost 22 now. But that's why we chose the MedBen assets. We looked at several others, but it was because I don't need a lot of stores. We treat our stores like tasting rooms to kind of immerse the consumer in the brand. And then if you look at, we chose we're going to end up at 25. We cited an additional chunk of stores that'll open next year. We picked that 25 number. That's kind of where Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and Apple, their store footprint kind of ranges from 22 to 32. So we kind of chose the midpoint of 25. They've been able to build their brands in Florida. We're big believers in the Whole Foods model and trying to replicate that. So that's
great.
We track that.
Yeah. Bigger picture, Washington, rescheduling. I know it's like I said off the top, sparked the industry has woken up, and I just see this being a hot topic of conversation for a long time now, because we're going to wait probably 90 days, maybe into Q1 to see what the outcome will be at the DEA. Schumer and Booker, I'm hearing stories that they're trying to put everything together as quickly as possible with safe banking, because if we get rescheduling, I know. But long story short, we have some momentum building within this industry. Does this feel different this time? Do you think rescheduling does indeed happen?
Yes, I do. And I've tweeted about it when the president announced it last October. I hinted that it was coming a couple of weeks before. I think my tweet was keep an eye on DC this week. And then 4 or 5 days later, the president's announcement came out. It's always been the holy grail because it doesn't require congressional action. Getting any type of agreement out of anybody in Congress right now is a fucking disaster. It is so polarized. It is so divisive. We've all lived and died by that. But the difference this time, and while I would say it's different this time, and it's hard to, I can't point to a statutory provision. I can't point to a case law citation. What I can point to is The political will of leadership is now behind us.
Right.
We've never had that before. We've never had the president, the leader of the Democratic Party and the president actually say, I want this to happen, and actually have it happen. That's never, we've never had that. We've never had Schumer and Sherrod Brown actually want to push something. So let's talk about HHS and the rescheduling first. That's a big deal. For the first time in our fight in over 70 years, there's actually a piece of paper signed by the Secretary of Health and Human Services saying cannabis should be rescheduled because of a scientific review and that it has a medical benefit. Stop there for a second. Ignore all the FUD on Twitter. That is a big fucking deal. It's a huge shift in direction in this country. And I think that's why you're seeing, Wall Street bets wake up. I think that's why you're seeing institutional capital. I mean, you're looking at companies like Cresco that were trading 100,000 shares. What did Cresco trade yesterday? A couple million shares?
It was volumes through the roof.
So, I mean, MSOS is ripping every day, new interest. So that's because people have been waiting for it, but there hasn't been that push from leadership that we needed. It was always trying to stick safe banking on NDAA or stiff banking and an omnibus approach. It was always some kind of Hail Mary towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
The next steps now is where, as I've always said, now is where the work actually begins. So the work, now it's getting the rulemaking process done. DEA has never strayed. This is reported by CNBC2. Once the DEA receives a recommendation, they have not strayed from it as far as anybody can tell from a research standpoint. So DEA should confirm this. If there's anything that's subject to collateral attack, it'll be the DEA's ultimate rescheduling. There is the ability for folks to potentially challenge it. That could happen. Jeff Schultz, who's a good friend of mine, has written extensively about that. Yeah. So that could happen. Again, what are the prospects? Again, because leadership is behind it.
Yes.
If it's not an ad hoc. So then you go into rulemaking, and I don't think you're going to see a final set of rules on how this is going to work until probably Q3 next year. And there'll be choppy waters. I mean, look at the market today. It was 7-8 days of a run. Today it was kind of like back to reality a little bit. But again, the buying's there. It's just there's going to be some price action. But ultimately, I think you'll see something final by about this time next year because they're going to want to score max points ahead of the election. And then there's a bigger question. The bigger question for me is how does that final DEA decision on rescheduling, how does that translate into how the market is regulated? Right. And there's a myriad of threads on Twitter right now about, is the FDA going to take over? Is Pharma going to take over? Who's going to take it? My humble opinion, this is going to be, so the federal government fucked up a little bit by letting this go on for as long as they did. Because they can't just step in and overturn the state's rules, and in most cases, states' constitutions that have authorized cannabis regulation. They can't come in and under federalism principles, they can't come in and say, we're going to take that away from you. It's very similar, if you study it, to alcohol. So when the Volstead Act was repealed in 1933, again, there was existing laws prior to that how alcohol was to be regulated at the state level. So they kind of had to come up with a new framework, which, again, when the political will of leadership is behind something, they figure out a way to do it. When they're not behind it, they punt, kick, or just don't do it at all. So in this case, I think it is going to be regulated very similarly to alcohol. If you guys recall, there's been several op-eds written by large alcohol lobbying associations and trade groups over the last 6 months. As they were coming out amidst all of us being down 80-90% in the public companies and getting our asses kicked every day. But if you go back, the breadcrumbs have been dropped for quite some time.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be regulated very similarly to alcohol. If you look at alcohol, there's top line federal regulation. There's a 3-tier system for distribution. And then there's ultimately the state's rules apply where, you go to New Jersey, some towns don't have alcohol at all, dry counties. You go to Pennsylvania, liquor stores in Pennsylvania are state owned. They run the liquor stores in Pennsylvania.
That's huge for the industry, though. If you're regulated the same way as alcohol, it's like, okay, now you can compare and you're welcomed into the actual group where society just starts to accept it more. And the people that have this stigma on the overall industry starts to shed year over year. And as boomers start to get older, younger generations come in and what's normal to them is normal for their future. And then this just becomes a foregone conclusion, right?
To me, that's it. I think that's the key. And again, it's also from an ease of for the FDA, if you think about it, for the FDA regulates on science. If you recall, Mitch McConnell was pretty strong in wanting the FDA to take over CBD. And the FDA's response was, we regulate based on science. There's no body of science on cannabinoids because it's been Schedule 1 for so long. So there's no way the FDA in practice could put their arms around regulating a full cannabis industry nationwide with absolutely no baseline to do so. There's no scientific studies on if you have diabetes, can you take this cannabis edible? What's the effect going to be? If you have hypertension, can you smoke? Should you be smoking cannabis? There's no way that they can do it. So the easiest way for cannabis to assimilate into a regulatory system that now involves the federal government, not just the state governments, is the exact path as alcohol. And if you recall that there was a House subcommittee hearing earlier this year where Nancy Mace brought this exact point up. And I think she said it 5 or 6 times. If we were to just regulate it like alcohol, we could be legal tomorrow. Now, you know me, I believe in coincidences. I've never seen one. That wasn't said for no reason. This has been in process for quite some time. Alcohol has been controlling this process, and everyone blames pharma for everything bad that gets said about cannabis, which is probably fair, probably true. But alcohol has quietly been setting this up because there was no way they were going to let this happen and not be a part of it. 0% chance.
Bingo.
No, I mean you saw that with Canopy's move. I mean with Constellation's moving to Canopy to start it off, and then you've got Altria, Big Tobacco going into Kronos. I mean they've made moves across the board.
Pabst Blue Ribbon launching a beverage. Pabst Blue Ribbon launches a beverage. Sam Adams launches a beverage. They're all in Canada testing. All the distribution companies, all the big distributors are distributing cannabis and CBD in the U.S. in Canada or the U.S. right now, learning the business.
I hate to say it, but go ahead.
Everyone poo-pooed Erwin Simon when he bought Sweetwater Brewing, and I was like, that is genius. I was like, that is a genius move.
Look, I know Erwin well, and I've obviously he was the debt holder on Medman when we did the deal, and I've stayed in touch, and I personally think he's playing chess, and everybody else on the MSO world's playing checkers.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah.
They're building into a beverage brand. Like we've had this pretty generic question, but where do you see the whole beverage industry in the next couple of years?
I can tell you this, since this is actual experience. So number one, we are incredibly bullish on beverage. We've got a partnership in alcohol with one of the largest companies in alcohol right now. Can't say much more than that, but we're down the road. That's how firmly we believe in it. And again, we raised a lot of capital from alcohol when we went out and did our private raise. So I think beverage, if we look back 10 years from now, is beverage will be the biggest category. And I don't say that just because of my own beliefs. I'm going to give you kind of a case in point. And this right here is a nectar product that we make. We developed it over the last, call it 6 months. We were able to suspend the cannabinoids in the water column. It's rosin, so it's solventless based, so no chemical extraction agents. And this has literally changed so many of my friends' lives. It's crazy. And my wife and I's friends' lives. It's crazy. So you can take this. It's 1.5 milligrams in a full dropper. You can mix it in anything. So my wife takes this out in her purse if we go out to a cocktail party or we go have a cocktail on a Friday afternoon at a friend's house or at a bar. Order a virgin margarita, 2 droppers in it, and you can have 2 of those to 3 of those in a given night. You get up the next day and have 0 hangover, and you have a great buzz. So
really,
this is just, I mean, it's a little clumsy because you got to dose your own deal. But like last night at dinner, where she made dinner after we all got home from a crazy day, and instead of having our normal bottle of wine with a bolognese, we had 2 Moscow Mules of this. Yep. And I got up today and felt like $1 million.
You did.
That's why Canopy made the bet. Everyone thought Canopy's up there losing money trying to sell flower and pre-rolls. They could give 2 fucks about flower and pre-rolls. Great. They are developing in Canada because it's the only market they could go truly do R&D. They are developing a beverage that's a sessionable cannabis-infused beverage that's probably very low calorie, very low sugar. Because if you look at the data, most of the new consumers, especially the millennials, hate being hungover. They don't want to be hungover. Yeah. That is the single biggest. If you look back, I think beverage will be the biggest segment in this industry. And it's also anyone that, I don't believe in this kind of race to open as many stores as possible because I don't want to be a mom and pop liquor store owner when Total Wine comes to town.
Yeah.
No.
It's a lot of the same sentiment you've been saying for a while, Anthony.
You look at what Sunburn does from an experiential perspective. They're at music festivals, they're at venues. That beverage will be big. The beverage is going to be in the future. I mean, I think it's going to be. I share the same sentiment. It's going to be the largest category because you can't be smoking at a Panthers game. You
No.
can't be smoking at a Dolphin game. I mean, it's the people are going to be consuming cannabis like they do alcohol, and it's going to be via beverage.
I also think
It's
I think the other thing that's often overlooked is the ease of use to enter the category. So, if you go into a traditional California dispensary right now for a consumer, it's fucking overwhelming to walk in there. This, that, all the crazy shit. Whereas a beverage is something, oh, I know this. And I think the one thing that cannabis has been missing from a social standpoint is you're at a party, you're at a hockey game, you're at a football game, you're at a happy hour. You don't want to be the stoner that smells like weed because you just smoked a joint. And you don't want to be the only one that's not drinking something. Because kind of our society, just as you look at it a whole, it's been conditioned on something's in your hand, whether it's a Coors Light, a Bud Light, a martini, whatever it is, you want something in your hand.
Yes.
So if that something in your hand can now have cannabis in it, and you're not going to be hungover, and you enjoy the taste, and it's something that it's a no-brainer. And to me, it's very overlooked.
So what's this? I've been following actually your story quite a bit. It's incredible what you're building. It's a lifestyle right now. And I know you've had a successful business exit, but I think this is more, from what I'm gathering, like you've taken a lot of pride and this is almost personal to you with what you're doing. You want to elaborate on that?
It is personal. So for a lot of reasons, I get to honor my father. The Operation Sunburn. Sunburn was the name of the DEA task force that was put together to arrest him and ultimately put him in prison. So there's a bit of a chip on my shoulder there. And then the bigger chip on my shoulder is we are really passionate about winning in Florida. To be able to keep my entire team together from the Bluma exit to Cresco. And look, don't make no mistake about it. There's a lot of, we've been, and me personally, I've been kind of overlooked as just a one-off single state operator. And I'm not, there's all the big conferences and the titans of cannabis up on the stage and blah, blah, blah. For us, we've always kind of had a chip on our shoulder. Like, you guys don't get it. And I think the single biggest point that people are missing is they don't, most of the other companies, aside from Ben Cobbler, who's a dear friend, nobody else on the C-suite smokes weed. Yeah. Nobody. And you can see that in the quality of their product. Yeah. And this is not something that I haven't said to them directly, by the way. I call them all out for it, but it was kind of a seminal moment when I knew Cresco wasn't going to work. Because after we sold, we're up in Chicago for meetings, and my team, we all said, hey, we're going to go outside and smoke a joint. The Cresco team looked at us like we had three heads. I'm like, well, if I was in Napa, I'm at Napa quite a bit with our alcohol partners, and I'm, want to have a glass of wine, they're like, fuck yeah, let's have a glass of wine, because that's you got to live and die it. So for me, that's telling the Florida story and honoring Florida is incredibly personal. Telling my father's story is personal. Kind of being the front line to go establish that California weed is not the industry standard. We can pump out we're introducing aged hash and Piatel products in Florida that aren't even sold in California dispensaries. We're bringing back old school Temple Ball hash, Moroccan hockey pucks, hash coins, aged hash. I mean, go show me a menu in Cali or Colorado where you can buy any of that. They're not there. So I've had a ton of California companies come into Florida, 710 Labs, Jungle Boys, Alien Labs, and think they can just say, hey, we're Preferred Gardens. Hey, we're the best in California. Come get it. And we're kind of like, you know what? You're good, but go fuck yourself. Welcome to Florida. Yeah. So it is very personal for us because we are Florida. And for me, it's very personal to honor my dad and just kind of, I've sat in the sidelines for quite some time. I've been waiting and kind of gone through a lot of different, from the Soul Global days to the Liberty Health days to the Bluma days, and doing other people's things, other people's way. This one's me. I raised my own capital. It was non-brokered. We didn't use any banks. And we're doing this and building this ourselves. So we've got a bit of a chip on our shoulder, and that kind of bleeds through. And we're just, more importantly, as Anthony said, we're trying to live the experience and make it about an experience and build a brand. I think we can do this. We can build the first brand in cannabis. No one's built a brand yet. Cookies had one, but in my opinion, he kind of gave it back. He gave it back when he did the licensing deals and allowed other companies to grow his product, and it wasn't the same quality as Cookies on Melrose that we all used to go to. So that's why we're much more focused on staying small and focusing on Florida for a period of time.
I was kind of moved a little bit with some of the posts that you made on Instagram a couple of weeks ago when Jimmy Buffett had passed, and how you're trying to basically, as I said to you before we started recording, the state of Florida appeared to be let's get away from all the craziness of the world. When Ron DeSantis kept the, whole economy open and running during COVID. And so many people have fluctuated and moved to Florida. They feel like, it's work-life balance where you can work remotely, but you're trying to create a lifestyle. Jimmy Buffett, let's face it, guy was a legend, will remain a legend for as long as people know him forever.
Yeah.
Did you know him at all
My
personally?
family,
Or no?
families were very close. So I grew up in the Keys. I went to Key West Elementary. He was down there. He knew my dad really well.
No kidding.
Yeah. So like, I mean, in my will, in my estate planning, it's in there. One of the few things my lawyer was like, "You really want this?" At my funeral, they can only play "A Pirate Looks at 40." That's like
Nice.
if you're born in Florida, that's a love song to Florida and smuggling.
Yeah.
So Jimmy Buffett dime hit hard. He had stopped by our
right.
store in May, down when he was down in Key West visiting. Some of our investors are, settled in Key West in the 1800s. So we're all the way in on the Conch Republic, and our store down there is right across the street from Sloppy Joe's. So we're about a block from the Pier House. My dad moved his first 70,000 pounds of weed on a shrimp boat and offloaded it at the Pier House on Duval Street at 100 Duval Street. And now I get to operate a Sunburn store at 130 Duval Street, 1 block away. So it's literally full circle for me. And it is a lifestyle. Jimmy Buffett embodies exactly who we are. And it's an entire look. Cannabis is a medium to make people relax the same way Corona is. Corona sold a lifestyle. Casamigos sold a lifestyle. When you saw the Casamigos ad of George Clooney and the boys hanging out on the beach having fun, you're like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And it's the same exact focus here. This isn't a wannabe pharmaceutical company. We're a lifestyle.
Yeah. What do you think your dad would say if he looked at, just the landscape of cannabis potentially being rescheduled today?
I think he'd be shitting. I think he'd just be sitting back, having a Crown and 7 on the couch going, this is nuts. I was 40 years ahead of my time. And there's so many people like him that I get to interact with. I mean, I was at our Tallahassee store recently, and a patient brought in a plaque that someone had given my dad for his birthday, and I was in our Pensacola store, and the DEA agent that actually put my dad in prison showed up and visited me at the store. I mean, it was an incredibly unique moment. So there's just so much history.
What did he say?
He gave me a big hug, and I said, look, I got to ask you a question, because he came up with the code name Operation Sunburn. I said, he's now an appellate court judge. And I went, how's it feel standing in a dispensary in Pensacola, your hometown, named Operation Sunburn, running from 1975 to 1983? You were chasing my dad's shrimp boats right here. You named it Operation Sunburn. Now you're standing with me inside the store. How does it feel? He goes, I don't even know what the fuck to say. He's been a great friend. So it's just like, I had people reach out. The former public defender for Key West reached out the other day and wants to do a full interview and come sit down. He was a lieutenant governor in the state of Florida for a period of time. And he's like, look, I remember your dad and the good old days. So to be able to, I feel very humbled to be able to tell that story, because it's a story that's, everything in cannabis is focused on California. Florida's been at it just as long as California. They just went legal first.
I think Florida is California, but done right.
Correct. It's all cyclical, by the way.
There's no East Coast brands. I mean, with all due respect, like True Leaf, Air, Move, like they're cannabis. As far as I'm concerned, they're companies.
Correct.
Those are cannabis companies. They're not brands. I mean, do you attribute the brand much? What do you attribute to the growth in the OMU numbers? Because I mean, I watch those like a hawk, and you guys are steadily climbing. I mean, are you attributing it to being able to develop that brand and connect with the Florida consumer, I guess, paired with the premium product?
That's really it. You nailed it, Anthony. It's you got to have an authentic story. We have that in spades. That's number one. So if you're going to have a brand story, you can't just be something that's made up in a marketing office somewhere, which is about 80% of the cannabis brands that compete against in Florida.
Yeah.
And then of the ones, like Jungle Boys has an authentic story, Cookies has an authentic story, but they're Cali stories. They're not Florida stories. If you live in Florida, you want to be in Florida. You don't want to be in California anymore. So it's the authentic story, and I'd say it's authentic story, store locations, and then more importantly, not just product quality, but array of products. We've quickly become a one-stop shop, because flower products, yes. Pre-rolls, yes. Solventless products, yes. Edibles in both solventless and distillate, yes. Distillate products, yes. All the aged hash that's not on anybody else's menu. And it's to have all of that there. It's really funny. We do a special called Party All the Time with $25 1 gram distillate vapes. And to see my competitors like True Leaf and AYR and others come and price to come match us with 11 stores, We sit back in the office and it's invitations to highest form of flattery is said a few times. To see Jungle Boys try to launch Piatella, not in California, but they tried to launch it here to compete with us. So, to see 710 Labs say they're lowering their prices in Florida, I can tell you why they did that. It's because we've been kicking them in the teeth on rosin.
I've got them both at my desk, and I can tell you the Piatella petrol station is it's right up there with the Percy rosin I've got from 710 Labs.
And by the way, they've got great product.
If not, it's smoother. Yeah. They do.
I love the competition.
I prefer to buy the.
Yeah.
I prefer to support you in the Florida brand, though. I mean, I was 710 Labs was the first brand I probably ever bought in Colorado years and years ago.
They set the standard.
Great. Yeah, but I mean, I've always seen cannabis as like hip hop. You had West Coast hip hop, you had East Coast hip hop, and they could both coexist. Cannabis, there's nothing on the East Coast with the exception of what you're building with this brand. And I mean, it's great to see, and it speaks volumes the way that the company is progressing.
Thanks, man.
Where do you want to take this company? Like, are you thinking, do you want to take it public, or have you been there, done that?
Well, I would wait till, so that's one of the natural kind of fallouts of Schedule 3 is the ability, I believe, that'll be the green light with the update on Schedule 1, having those AML issues to potentially list in the U.S. Would I list in the U.S.? Absolutely. The other big fallout, I think, for rescheduling is the interstate commerce piece, because our goal is to build the brand in Florida and then be able to export it and become an asset-light MSO as opposed to an asset-heavy, OPEX-heavy, CAPEX-heavy MSOs that we see all of them torching cash.
Do you think interstate commerce could be coming sooner rather than later?
Wow.
I think it's going to be a natural product of it because alcohol is going to want it to be.
Okay. That's interesting.
3-tier distribution.
It's not a very popular take, but it would be damn efficient for the businesses.
Yeah. I have held I've held several unpopular opinions through time, including not being an MSO as being a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to agree with you there as well.
I don't see the value. I've never seen the value in having cost centers across 6-7 states when I couldn't distribute across those 6-7 states. And again, I've always tracked alcohol because if you look at alcohol, if you're a whiskey business, your distillery is in Kentucky and you ship nationwide. You don't have a distillery in every single state that you want to sell product in.
100%.
Where do you guys grow in the state? Are you up by Gainesville or like in the Panhandle, or it's in
Orlando? And if you ever want to come up, open invitation to come to a tour. We have 2 farms in Orlando. Yeah, open invitation.
Awesome. I was down at the Benzenga conference last April, where we got only 36 inches of rain in 3 days, and then
That's right.
I was ready to fly back to Detroit, and I got a text from my brother. It said, "Why don't you come up to Fort Lauderdale to this little concert called Tortuga?"
Oh yeah.
So, Jesus, what a shit show that was. Just walked into Fort Lauderdale, great concert. But when I got back to the hotel one of the nights, I literally was probably 10 feet away from you because I saw some of the pictures you posted on Instagram. But I was bummed that I didn't run into you. But what a concert that is down in Fort Lauderdale.
We go every year. It's awesome. And I actually we're going to have an activation there this year. So we got cleared through Live Nation. So our 2 big marketing tenets are on the water and play it loud. So we're doing concerts across the state, music festivals across the state where we have a presence. And then we do sandbars, boating, fishing, surfing. So we're sponsoring 5 or 6 surf contests a year. We just announced a partnership with a pro surfer named Justin Quintal, kind of one of the biggest underground guys out there right now. He's based in Jacksonville. So we're building a little surf team, a little wakeboard team, a little skate team. So it's, again, experiential, as Anthony mentioned. But Tortuga, if you want to come back, dude, we have Tortuga pretty dialed in. That's a wild 3 days.
Yeah. We need to go around with this surfer and just film stuff at some of the events, like Nazaré, Portugal, and have your name brand all over that. I cannot believe some of the lifestyle that these surfers live, but
it's why. So he just got invited to surf in the Pipe Masters this year on Oahu. So we're going to go out. Nice. I used to go out there I used to go out there quite a bit. I'm going to go out in December with him for the Triple Crown, and he'll be rocking some sunburn on the beach at Pipeline, which would be pretty cool.
It's amazing lifestyle. Not just a company, but a lifestyle, right? Listen, this has been incredible. Please keep in touch. Love having you on. I know you've been busy, but let's keep in touch. And as things start to mature a little bit more and we get some feedback, let's have you back on.
Love to. You guys at Benzinga?
We will be at
Chicago?
Chicago, yeah.
All right, I'll be there. I'm there for 1 day, and then I'm coming up on the first day. So I'll see you guys up there.
Same.
Okay.
I'm in the 27th, out the 28th in the morning.
Yeah, I gotta go.
So
I gotta
we'll
go
be,
to Houston.
we'll both be
we,
there.
we got a big investor event we got a big group of investors out of Houston, so I'll be there 27, flying out the morning of the 28th too. So I'll see you there.
All right.
Cool.
Cheers. Thanks, Brady.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Hey, everyone. So what'd you think of the interview? Did you like what we asked? Is there any information you want to learn more of? Then leave a comment below and let us know what you think. As usual, share this video with your network, smash that like button, and most importantly, make sure to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.